Okay, so let us look at our first pattern, and that is how do we ask the user for multiple values that we then store in an array. So it's quite straightforward. Step one, the first thing we need to do is to create the array. That will be used to store the values later on. Step two, we will inform the user what they need to enter. And then step three and step four, we'll simply use a for loop to keep prompting the user for the values. Okay, so let's look at that. So let's say that I want the user to enter five values. I will declare that the array will contain 5 values. Okay, so notice there is no equal sign and curly braces because I do not yet know the values. So I am just doing a declaration. In step 2, I will simply tell the user what I want them to do, right? Such as you will be asked to enter 5 integers below, new line. And then the work actually happens in step 3 and step 4, where we use a for loop. Again, we start at 0 and we stop when I is more than 5 or more, right? And each time we go into the loop, we have 2 actions that we want to perform. The first action is to create a prompt for input, and then another to actually store the input in the array. So let's look at that. Okay, so let me come here and I'll get rid of this. I want to save time, but I expect that you would have created a new project. Okay, but I'm not going to create a new project. Okay, but I expect you to create a new project. All right, so the first thing I need to do, so step 1, declare the array. Okay, easy enough. Let's say we're going to ask for ints, so I'm going to say int maybe numbers. Okay, and let's say we're asking for let's say 3 numbers. Okay, so again I am simply saying that I want an array that will eventually hold 3 integers. Next, right, I will specify to the user what I want them to do. Okay, so this is the instruction. So in this case, I'm going to say cout. Okay, and I'm going to say something like please enter 3 numbers below. Full stop, new line. Okay, great. Let's save this. Let's compile it again. We're not finished, but sometimes it makes sense to check our work to see if what we have so far actually works. All right, good, so it works. So please enter 3 numbers below. Good, we're making progress. Let's go back to our code and let's continue. So steps 3 and 4. All right, prompt for the numbers using a for loop. Okay, so I'll set up my for loop. I know that I need to create a variable. I'm going to call it I, and I'm going to set it to 0 since that's where arrays begin, position 0. And since it's 3 items, I'm going to say while I less than 3, and then I keep incrementing by 1. Okay, now what do I want to do? Well, the first thing I want to do is to ask the user to enter the number. So please enter number And then I'm gonna be a bit fancy. I'm gonna actually say the number. So to do that, I'm gonna say output I, which at the beginning would be 0. I'm gonna add 1. Okay, that way when the user sees please enter number, they're gonna see 1, and then please enter number 2, and then please enter number 3. Okay, and then colon and a space. Okay, good. All right, so that's my prompt. And remember, we do not put new lines for prompts. Okay, so I know some of you are still doing this where you put a new line, okay, or you put a ENDL. Okay, we don't want to do that. Whenever you're creating a prompt, do not skip the line. Okay, do not skip to a new line. Do not go to a new line. Okay, so once we ask for the number and the user types in the number and presses enter, then you want to store that in the array. So I'm going to say numbers, and where? Well, position I. Okay, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so if I save this and I recompile, okay, and I rerun, well, then please enter number 1, maybe 12, number 2, 11, number 3, maybe 10, and it's finished. Again, nothing happens, but we have successfully implemented the first portion where we ask for inputs. Again, step 1, we create the array, declare it. Step 2, we tell the user what we want them to do. And step 3 and step 4, we use a for loop to prompt for the numbers. Now, having the numbers in the array is nice, but let's do something with them. Okay, let's do something with the numbers. So the first thing we tend to do is, let's say, find the sum, the total of the values in the array, right? So the reason why we collect numbers, the reason why we collect values in arrays is because we want to use them for some purpose. So for now, we assume that this purpose is to find the sum of the array. Okay, good. So how do we go about doing that? Well, again, with everything, like everything, there's a recipe, right? There's a standard way to do that. And so let's look at that. So what we tend to do, right, when it comes to find the sum of an array, obviously we create the array. We have already done that. This step is important. We need to create a variable that we set to 0. This is the reason why our answer will be the correct answer. If we skip this step, specifically where we set the variable to 0, then our sum will not be correct. All right, and then step 3 and step 4 again is pretty much the same, right? So of course we ask for the numbers, and then finally we can add the number to the sum variable. All right, good. So again, we have the array. We have to create a variable to hold the final sum, and then we need to use a loop, right? Now obviously we've already done that, right? So we've asked for the values, right, and we've stored them in the array. Okay, so basically we want to do step 2 here and step 6. We want to create a variable, and then we want to loop through the array and add them together. All right, sounds a bit confusing. It's really not. Let's go ahead and implement this. Okay, so I need to create a variable Okay, create a variable to hold the sum or total. Okay, and so int I must set it to 0. Okay, so I'm going to say int sum, and again, very importantly, I must set it to 0. Okay, now once I have done that, I'm just going to create a loop. Okay, right, and I'm going to loop through the array, which by this point has the numbers that were provided, and all I'm going to do is to add the numbers. And so I'm going to say sum will be what was the old sum plus what is in the current value for the array. Okay, so I'm going to say numbers I. Okay, and that's pretty much it. All right, that's it. So I have my array, and I'm going to go through the array box by box, item by item, get the value, and add it to the sum variable. That's it. Okay, and so now I can come out here and I can print. Let me skip a line. I can print the sum. Okay, the sum of the array items or values is, right, and then I put sum and full stop, skip a line. All right, again, somewhat straightforward, right? I iterate over the array, I sum the array items to get a total, which I call sum, and then I simply print that. So if I save this and I compile it and I run it, if I add 10 in, right, I have 20 and I have 30, well, then I know that I'll end up with my answer being 60, right? Sum of the array values is 60. Okay, so this is how we find the sum of an array. So even though I did the first step, the first part first, you can do it in different parts. So you can do this part first, where you just store the numbers in the array, and then in the second part you actually go over the array again, but this time you add the numbers or the elements inside the array. Okay, and then obviously you want to display the result that you came up with. All right, so this is a standard way. Again, this is a standard way for how to find the sum of an array. Get the values into the array, right, following the algorithm that I have shown you, and then we simply go iterate over the array again, but this time we go over the array and choose the items one by one. Now this applies to sum, but it also applies to finding the product, okay, or finding the average. Good. Now the only thing I want you to keep in mind, whenever you're finding the the product, you have to set the product to 1. Okay, so let me come down here. I'm going to create a variable to hold the product. Okay, and I must set it to 1. Okay, and that should make sense why I have to set it to 1. So I'm going to create a variable called product, and I have to set it to 1. Right? Obviously, it has to be 1 because if I set it to 0, well then 0 times any number will give me about 0. So even if I enter 10, 20, 30, the computer will say, okay, 0 times 10 times 20 times 30, right? It will always give me about 0. So that's why we must set it to 1 when we're finding the product. And remember, the product simply means the numbers multiplied together. Okay, good. So I have the variable for product, and then the rest is the same. So I'm going to take this here and I'm going to put this here because I just want to save time. Okay, good. Now obviously I'm not finding the sum anymore. Okay, I'm finding the product. So I'm going to say product will be the old product times or multiplied by whatever current value I am looking at in the array, which again the array is called numbers, and it will be at position I. Okay, and that's it. So when I finish this loop, I should have the product of the elements. So in this one I found the sum of them, and in this one I found the product of them. Okay, and so I can print that as well, right? And I could say the product of the array elements or items is product. Okay, that's it. And so now whenever I want to test it out, I have to recompile it. Remember, every time I make a change I have to run this step again and then execute. If I put 1 and maybe 10 and maybe 1 again, right? Well, then the sum is 12, 10 plus 1 plus 1, and the product is 10. 1 times 10 times 1, all right, which is 10. Okay, so that is how we do that, how we find the product. And so we can extend this. So for example, if I wanted to find the average, well, that's easy enough. I would just take the sum, right? So if I wanted to find the average, all right, so calculate the average, right? I will just take the sum and divide it by how many items are in the array. And to find how many items in the array, there's a standard formula. And so this is something I want you to remember. So even though we know there are 3 items, there's actually a standard way to find how many they are. And so this is the formula that I want you to use. So I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to say int, maybe len. Okay. And I'm going to say that will be the size of function. Okay. And what I put is the name of the array, numbers. Okay. And then I'm going to divide that by size of, okay, the first element. Okay, I know it's a funky looking formula, but you will understand what it means in due time. Okay, so for now, take it for granted. This is how you find out how many elements are in an array, and it's simply size of numbers divided by size of the first element in the array. Okay, good. So I could easily show that to you. So if I say cout len, okay, we should still end up with 3, right? So just for us to test, I want to show that to you. Okay, so if I put 11, 12, 13, notice I get 3. Okay, that's the way this formula works. So whenever you need to find how many items are in an array, this is the formula right here. Okay, now why do I want this formula? Well, simple, because I want to find the average. And so to find the average, okay, I'm gonna use double, by the way, because average could be a decimal number. I'm gonna say double AVG for average is the sum divided by the length. That's it. The sum divided by the length. It can't be easier than that. And so now I'll come down here and I will print the average. Okay, the average of the array items is AVG. Okay, so let's save this and let's give it one more test to make sure it still works and the new addition of average works. So 1, 2, 10. Okay, so that's 13. All right. So what did we get? We got the average is 4. Okay. Okay, so that doesn't sound right. It's not 4, right? 10, let's see, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 divided by 3 obviously is not 4. That's incorrect. So where did we go wrong? Okay, so I have the sum and I have the length. All right, that's the reason why. Okay, and this allows me to discuss something very important. Okay, good. So another teaching opportunity. All right, so pay attention. When you divide 2 ints, you get an int. So the answer would have been 4 point something, right? But the computer threw away the remainder. Now we have a problem. We want that remainder. So what do I do? What do I do? Okay. Well, the easiest thing to do, we should be able to, yeah, let's just do this for now. Let's just say the length. Okay. And we're gonna multiply by 1.0. Okay. All right. Now, why am I doing that? Okay. Why am I doing that? So 1, 2, 10. So now we get 4.33. Okay, so why do we have the decimal number now? Well, I did a little trick, because when you multiply a number by 1.0, then the computer changes it from being an int to being a double. So length went from being an int to being a double when I multiplied it by 1.0. All right, and then when you are dividing when you divide an int by a double, the answer has to be a double. But that's a little trick. All right. Again, this is something that we're gonna come back to as to how do you transform types. Okay, what if you don't want an int? What if you want the int to become a double sometimes? Or what if you want a double to become an int somehow? Right, we'll look at that as we progress. But for now, we saw the problem. We're trying to divide an integer type by an integer type, and the computer has been programmed to do that. The computer has been programmed in such a way that when it has an integer divided by an integer, it throws away the remainder. Okay, to overcome that, I use this trick right here. Make this one become a double, and once one of them is a double, the computer is forced to keep the entire number. All right, that's it. I'll see you in the next video where we continue working on these algorithms. All right, so we need a way how to find the, well, we did the product, we did the sum. We still need to find a way to find the max and the min of the items in the array. All right, so we leave this here, and I'll see you in the next video. I hope this video made sense.